Hey, how's it going? This is Chad Morris, and I wanted to revisit a concept I've coined, modal mapping. You can check out my first video entitled Guitar Solo Secrets, Modal Mapping, to get a more in-depth explanation about what it really is. But simply put, modal mapping is a way to facilitate chords of a complex chord progression by using related modes from each chord quality, which happen to fall nearest to your current fingering position. So in my previous modal mapping video, which was my first video, by the way, I realized that the chord progression I was using as an example didn't fully explore all 7 Greek modes. So in this video, I've crafted a unique chord progression that will showcase modal mapping across all 7 Greek modes. So let's get to it. So we're going to be mapping this new chord progression first from a comfortable position, a common position, which is the root of the very first chord of the progression. But first, a little disclaimer. You're going to have a strong understanding of what modes really are, otherwise this will be really confusing. We're not always using the modes that correspond to each chord. We're simply using a mode that falls along a related interval of that chord that happens to be closest to where we're soloing. And we're using that related mode simply as a shape, a framework from which to work. Remember, the point of modal mapping and the point of this exercise is to facilitate chords, both related and unrelated chords, from one position on the fretboard. And this is going to promote fluidity in your soloing. Okay, so with that being said, let's get down to the progression. So the first chord is an A minor 7th into an A minor 11th. And you can just play the Aeolian mode, the natural minor scale. You can also play the blues or the minor pentatonic. The second chord is a G minor 9th. And instead of chasing that root, we're going to stay where we just were, around A, 5th fret, and play A Locrian instead. Now, if I was playing this chord progression for real, I would be using G Dorian, which would end up being A Phrygian. It would lead into the next chord a little bit better, but for the sake of this exercise, we're going to be using A Locrian or G natural minor. The next chord is F major 7th. And instead of chasing that F, we're going to stay right where we were, A, and play A Phrygian. The next chord is an E minor 9th, and we're going to facilitate this chord using A Dorian as a framework. A Dorian is a related mode in the E minor scale that just happens to be closest to where we were just soloing. You can think of the next chord as simply an A major 7th sound. It's inverted, so the root isn't on the bottom anymore, but it's still an A major. So we just solo along A major here. The next chord is a D major 7th, and we're going to use the A Mixolydian framework. Now, if I was playing this for real, I would be using A major or D Lydian, just because it flows into the next chord a little bit better. But for the sake of the exercise, we're going to be using the A Mixolydian framework. The next chord is an A major 7th sharp 4, and we're going to be using the Lydian mode, A Lydian. Now remember, we've covered like 6 or 7 chords now without moving our hand position. This is the point of modal mapping. The second to last chord is an F major 7 sharp 4, and instead of chasing that F Lydian, we're going to stay right where we were, A, and play A Aeolian. Why? Because A Aeolian is located on the 3rd scale degree in the F Lydian mode. And finally, we end on A major 7th. And you know what to play for that. So here's how all this sounds when it's applied. Now, like I did with my first modal mapping video, I want to take a look at another position and show how the modes will change to accommodate this new position. Remember, the point of this is to be able to play absolutely anywhere on the fretboard freely and use your ear to catch a note and automatically know which modal frameworks to use. Now I'm going to map the same exact chord progression, but from the position of C on the 6th string. Okay, for that first chord, A minor 7th into the A minor 11th, we're going to be playing C Ionian, or rather using C Ionian as a framework to work our soloing. That second chord was a G minor 9th, and we're going to use the C Dorian framework to work the G minor 9th. Again, why C Dorian? C Dorian happens to be the mode located on the 4th scale degree of the G natural minor scale. The next chord was F major 7th, and we're going to be using C Mixolydian to facilitate this chord. The following chord was an E minor 9th, and we're going to use C Lydian as a framework to work this chord. Again, we haven't moved our hand position outside of the C on the 6th string. Remember that inverted A major 7th? We're just going to use C sharp Phrygian. C sharp Phrygian just happens to be the 3rd scale degree located on the A major scale. And since we're around C, we'll just attack it there. For your D major 7th, we're right here at D, we can use D major. But for the sake of this exercise, we can think of it as C sharp Locrian. For the A major 7 sharp 4, we're going to play C sharp Aeolian. Again, why? Because C sharp Aeolian is the mode that's falling on the 3rd scale degree of the A Lydian scale. Then we go to that F major 7 sharp 4, and we're going to be using C Ionian. You can do the math. And we end on that big A major 7th, and you can use the C sharp Phrygian framework for that. So I know some people are asking, well, how do you find these modal frameworks? Well, first you have to know the scales that accompany each quality of chord. Then you have to understand the modes located on each interval of that scale. A simple example, a C major 7th belongs to the C major scale. The 1st scale degree of the C major scale is C Ionian. The 2nd scale degree is Dorian. 3rd, Phrygian. 4th, Lydian. 5th, Mixolydian. 6th, Aeolian. 7th, Locrian. Now, if you're soloing and the next chord coming up is C major 7th, and your current hand position is close to any one of these 7 modes, you can grab that mode as a framework to outline C major, instead of trying to chase the root. Anyway, here's how this second modal map can work when it's applied. So the point of all this is to be able to facilitate chord progressions with fluidity, no matter how complex they are, and from anywhere on the fretboard. Additionally, positional changes into different modal frameworks will give you new melodic ideas while you're soloing, which can put more depth into your playing. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You can begin to superimpose more exotic scales over these modal frameworks and create some outside sounds. And this is something that Allan Holdsworth was absolutely a genius with. And I also didn't even get to cover the altered chords, which will actually need the modes of the melodic and harmonic minor scales, as well as the diminished and whole tone. But even with something as complex as giant steps, which I can't wait to make a video on how to tackle it using this method, but you're only going to be using 3 or so modal frameworks and switching your position and using those same 3 and switching again and using those same 3. So you can break down giant steps essentially into a small ramp. You can kind of defang it and take the scariness out of it if you're thinking along these terms. I hope to get around to this soon, but I have a couple of other videos I need to do first. But anyway, this has been Chad Morris, and thanks for watching.